That music ends far too fast every time. We're going to have to do something about that. Welcome, everybody, to Friday's Lock-in Livestream. It's Friday night. We made it through another week, and we're here to celebrate one another, to celebrate Irish whiskey, and to have a chat. We have a great lineup tonight of whiskies and guests. So please tell me where you are and what it is you're drinking. What's in your glass tonight? Delighted to see so many of you turning out again for our Irish Whiskey Lock-in. We're going to have a good old time, a good old chat tonight. Here's Greg joining us from Ohio, and away we go indeed. We are up and running. All right, so I'm going to be drinking 3 whiskeys tonight. I'll be lining these up here in a second. Kieran Quinn is joining us in New Jersey via Tipperary. He's got Redbreast 21 in the glass. Good man yourself. No small pour there, Kieran. Good man. What else have we got? Sean O'Neill's drinking the new Velvet Cap. Great stuff. Just launched last week, new Velvet Cap. Myself and Omar Fitzel from That Stram Good took over the Blackwater Distillery Facebook page, and we were lucky enough to have more than 4,000 people watch that live stream in the last 7 days, which is incredible. Lorcan is joining us. He's drinking Power Signature. Lorcan, were you part of that epic Redbreast tasting that took place online today? 14 different cask strength Redbreasts were being tasted. I saw that with envy. Mark Cooney is joining us from Detroit. Mark was a previous guest. Great to see you, Mark. Thanks for joining us again. And Nicholas from Boston. You're not the only person from Boston. One of our guests tonight is going to be joining us from Boston. So great to see you here, Nicholas. And John Keane, good to see you, John. John is joining us on YouTube with his Redbreast Listowel in his glass, and he's in New Jersey. I should get my glass ready for what I'm pouring. All right, so we're going to get started here now in a second. Looks like we're up and running. Plenty of people joining and plenty of people kicking their feet up at the end of a week, putting a drop of whiskey in their glass. And Jamie is joining us, first-time viewer, long-time viewer, first-time commenting from Belfast in Northern Ireland, as they say, in Northern Ireland, and he's drinking Baines. And Ripon, California, joining us. All right, so we've got an international audience, which is great to see. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Three great whiskeys tonight. What are the whiskeys that I'm going to be drinking? Well, the first one I'm going to drink open tonight is the Gold Rush from JJ Corry. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Then I'm going to be popping open Old Favourite, a standard in Ireland, Powers Gold label, making a good dent in that bottle since I got it there a week or two ago. New labeling. And then we're going to move on to Jameson Black Barrel. I know many of you have that on your shelf. So we're going to close out with Jameson Black Barrel. I am going to be speaking with a bit of a lisp because I am post wisdom teeth removal. This week I had 4 wisdom teeth removed the same morning, and let me tell you, I'm in pain and my lips are swelling up. So I am minus 4 teeth, but I'm plus 100% volume in my lips. So hopefully you'll bear with me as I limp through this tasting, or this event tonight. But I wasn't going to miss it. I wanted to make sure that I turned up for a few whiskeys, because surely the whiskey will numb the pain. So welcome everybody from wherever you're joining us from. I hope you've got a drop of brown water that you can put in your glass and sip along with me. All right, so let me start by asking you all, if you are enjoying these live streams, I would love if you could share the live stream. So whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, do me a favor and press share or retweet or copy the link and post it to your social media. We're having a great reach with these live streams, and I'd love to reach more and more people. So the more people that watch this, the more people are going to be introduced to Irish whiskey, and ultimately the more people that are going to have somewhere to go on a Friday night when they can't go elsewhere and they don't want to drink alone. Well, we're here to help people drink along. So Jamie says he knows the pain of wisdom teeth all too well. Wash them out with some cask strength. I might keel over with the pain of doing that, but it might be worth it, Jamie, so I might have to do it. Jeff says that that's dedication. It is dedication. That's whiskey dedication right there. So Ashley's joining us from Australia. So yeah, if you are joining us from wherever you are in the world, please do me a favor and share this live stream with your friends. Press share while you're watching. Share it in any groups that you're a part of. I'd love more people to know what we're doing here and to listen to our great guests. I'm going to start by talking about some whiskey news, as I do every week, what has been happening in the world of Irish whiskey. And as we know now, and we've been talking about since for the past few weeks, many distilleries are producing hand sanitizer or in reduced operations. Many others are in full swing producing whiskey. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the world of Irish whiskey this week. It seems like it's the 5th or 6th week that Redbreast and the Dream Cask have been getting a mention for various reasons. So those of you in Ireland who are Redbreast fans will be familiar with the ballot system that was introduced to allow interested Redbreast purchasers register their interest and perhaps be drawn for one of the 890 odd bottles of Redbreast Dream Cask that was released or announced in the past few weeks. That ballot was drawn this week. Some people were lucky, some were not. I was not lucky, unfortunately. So instead, I'm going to have to take that Redbreast money and buy 20 bottles of proper 12. Didn't want to do it, but here we are. It's got to be done. And those of you who did get, who did have their name drawn in that ballot, congratulations! You're very lucky. It looks like you're going to get a lovely whiskey, and hopefully at some time in the future, I'll get to taste that. Ronan says it's a sore subject. It's a sore subject for a lot of people, no doubt about it. Andrew says wisdom teeth explains the dent in the Powers bottle. Yeah, it explains the dent in a lot of the bottles back there, Andrew. If you look closely in that cupboard and do a comparison to last week, you'll see that the weight of that cupboard has been reduced significantly. So that Dream Cask, we're not going to mention it again. That's it. It's gone from the news. There's no more about it. Those who are lucky got their ballot entry drawn. Those who were unlucky will be selling children and cars and doing second and third jobs to buy it on auction or on the secondary market. What else is happening in Irish whiskey news? Well, this Sunday, JJ Corry, might as well pour a drop of this now to get started. This is the Gold Rush from JJ Corry. This Sunday, Louise McGuan, the founder of JJ Corry, will be doing something very special. So a few weeks ago, she announced that she was going to create a crowd-sourced blended whiskey, a Bonders blend of whiskey that would have the crowd contributing to its creation. And to do that, she sent out samples, 3 samples, and I have them here. 3 samples of whiskey that have all come from JJ Corry's bonded warehouse, her bonded shed. And she has sent out little tasting, little instructions here that came with it. So basically what we have to do is on Sunday, she's going to host a live stream on the JJ Corry Facebook page and the JJ Corry YouTube channel. I think I have some details of it here. You pull it up. Yeah, so this Sunday, 8 p.m. Irish time. So that's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States and noon Pacific Standard Time. Louise is going to lead a tasting of these 3 samples. And even if you don't have these samples, I encourage you to join in JJ Corry Whiskey on Facebook and YouTube. And she's going to lead us through a tasting where we're going to give our notes and our feedback. And that feedback will turn into a blended whiskey, which is a great idea. And it came about as a result of us all being locked down, as a result of us all being isolated and quarantined and away from the regular events where you might be able to host such a tasting or a blending event. We can't do that as standard. So Louise has thought outside the box and has got us these 3 samples, which we're going to taste. So I encourage you to join in there. It'll be interesting to see how that turns out. Interestingly, the whiskey is called the Lock-in. And I have spoken to Louise and issued immediate legal proceedings for her use of the name. No, I haven't. Obviously the Lock-in existed before me, and Louise is more than entitled to use the name Lock-in, and I look forward to drinking the Lock-in eventually on this Irish Whiskey Lock-in live stream. So looking forward to that. So that's happening on Sunday. Finn Mack, who's down there in Dick Mack's in Dingle, says he's looking forward to that. His samples are staring him in the face. And Larry Mazuoka, happy to see the American JJ Corry. Indeed, Larry played a role in getting that to the United States. And let me see, Marshall is starting with a drop of Yellow Spot. So I don't think I have any more Irish Whiskey News. That is everything that I have on Irish Whiskey News for you. Nothing else is happening to my knowledge, but if anybody has any Irish Whiskey News, if you're in the Irish Whiskey industry, feel free to send it to me. You know how to get hold of me. Message me on any of the social media channels, and I'll be happy to share your Irish Whiskey News with our wonderful audience around the world. All right, so great to see again so many of you joining from all over. I want to talk a little bit about what tonight's live stream is about. So we've had guests on in the past few weeks from various Irish whiskey distilleries, representing various Irish whiskey brands. And tonight we've got a slightly different approach. And this came about as a realization that I've had recently about Irish whiskey. As I've had the pleasure of meeting so many of you online and in person and learning about the interest you have in Irish whiskey and the questions that you have about Irish whiskey, it's very obvious that we're all on a journey towards some greater knowledge or greater understanding of Irish whiskey. And I would argue that there are no Irish whiskey experts. We're only at different stages of our journey. And many of you here will know far more than I do about Irish whiskey, and many others might not know as much as I do. And it doesn't really matter where we are in the journey, so long as, in my mind, we're open to helping others on that journey so that we ourselves may be helped. And that means that anybody you meet in the Irish whiskey world is on a path, and they may have just been introduced to Irish whiskey, or they may be well down the line and teaching others about Irish whiskey. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is that it's so open and there are so many people willing to help. And what I've realized is that there are vehicles and vehicles for learning and vehicles for community that bring people together around Irish whiskey and help people understand more about Irish whiskey. And in my mind, those are the Irish whiskey associations and societies around the world where people have gathered and people have struck up friendships and people have expanded their knowledge. And so tonight we're going to talk about those. We're going to hero and highlight some of those Irish whiskey societies on both sides of the Atlantic, both in Ireland and the United States. And we've got two special guests who are going to join us, talk about their journey through Irish whiskey from the first time they encountered it to where they are today. We're then going to talk a little bit about Irish whiskey casks and owning your own barrel of Irish whiskey, because it just so happens that all three of us tonight have a barrel of Irish whiskey, and all three of us have them from different distilleries. So that can make for an interesting conversation. So as always, add your questions in for our guests. Let us know where you are in your whiskey journey. And crucially, one of the things that I want to find out from you tonight is I want to understand, beyond taste and beyond flavor, what draws you to Irish whiskey? Why is it that you come to live streams like this? Why is it that you turn up at tastings? Why is it that you're part of societies if you are part of them? I'd love to know why, because I think there's something much bigger here that's worth diving into. I'm going to ask my guests about it. So keep that in mind, and I'm going to bring on my guests now in a second, and I'm just going to check the comments. So we've got people from all over the world. It never fails to amaze me how many people in different corners of the world are joining and where they're joining from. So yes, good reminder from the Scotch world. So what am I tasting here? So this one in my glass right now, this that I have here is the Gold Rush from JJ Corry. Now this is a 9-year-old single grain Irish whiskey. It is a 9-year-old single grain, aged in bourbon barrels initially, and then finished in mezcal. And it's a really interesting, barrels of formerly held mezcal, which is Mexico's national spirit. And this is a unique release, only 250 bottles, made their way to Folsom Spirits in California, which is right in the heart of gold country, where the gold rush would have happened. Very diverse community here in California, a few hours away from me. And this is a unique release for the US market. So it's really interesting, very unusual. I like the lightness of single grains. But there's a bite to this from the mezcal that is undeniable, even on the nose. A little bit on the palate here. Let me taste. Wonderful warmth right there on the front of the palate. 52.5% alcohol, 105 proof. So yeah, there's a heat. There's a little hint of smokiness. And there's a kind of a grape to the palate that complements that floral fruitiness of the grain really well. It's a really interesting one. I opened it first I think it was 2 weeks ago, I opened this, and I've been taking my time in it. And every time I taste it, it tastes very, very different. So I'm going to be sipping on this, and let me know if anybody has tried this. But I'm going to bring in my 2 special guests for this evening. So welcome to Michael Cowman, Irish Whiskey Brand Ambassador and General Bon Vivant, and Allan Dwyer, President of the Irish Whiskey Society of America. You're both very welcome to tonight's live stream.
What is the crack, Barry? How are you keeping?
Glad to be here, thanks.
Doesn't Allan look like he is locked away in Dick Mac's pub in Dingle, where I think we'd all like to be locked away in, but he assures me you're somewhere else, you've assured me.
Yes.
No, I tell you, it upsets me, Barry, because I'm looking at all your live streams, and everybody has such a nice place. They're sitting with a bottle of, all their bottles in the background, and I'm sitting in the corner of my kitchen in Dublin, kind of going, all right, yeah, is the lighting okay? Can I get in here? But I do have a Dick Mac's glass, if that's any help. And Finn sent me up a couple, so
that does count.
That's something.
That definitely counts. One of the requirements for Michael to appear is that he appears from a hot press or a cupboard somewhere in his house and surprises us with the location that he's in.
Wasn't a hot press till I got into it, Barry.
Allan, you're putting us both to shame with your background, and I know it's your in your house in Boston. So kudos for this Irish whiskey representation that you have here. I'm really excited to talk to you both about your journey in Irish whiskey, your involvement and indeed creation of Irish whiskey societies, and our talk a little bit later about cask ownership. I mentioned to our audience that we're all on this journey of Irish whiskey somewhere along the line. Most of us know less than somebody else, and that's the beauty of it. I'm curious to understand a little bit about how you both got into Irish whiskey, and I'll start by asking you, Michael. I want to understand from you, or do you remember that first time where you thought to yourself, wow, Irish whiskey is actually really good?
Yeah, no, I absolutely do. I think I've told this story a few times, and I'm glad I'm speaking to a different audience for once, because I think everybody in Ireland has basically heard me tell this story at this point. But from my point of view, I used to be an officer in the Navy here in Ireland, and as part of that, we used to have to spend 4 or 5 months on oil tankers just as to get our qualification for driving ships, that kind of thing. And I was on an oil tanker in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and my auntie, when I got commissioned, she'd given me a bottle of Jameson 12 with my name on it. You now having the distillery, you can go get your bottle of Black Barrel with your name on it. At the time, it was a bottle of Jameson 12, get your name on it, so that was grand. So I threw it into the bag when I was going away on this trip. And so we were there from about October till kind of March time. So Christmas Day rolled around, and it was myself, there was 2 other Irish guys on the ship, and we were all off on Christmas Day. And I said to the lads, here, listen, I have a bottle of whiskey here. Will we crack it open? And they said, yeah, absolutely. So to my eternal shame, I would have always, mixed my whiskey, but I that's how we get into it. But I would have always mixed my whiskey, and this day we just had nothing to mix it with. So I threw the Jameson 12 into a steel mug that I still have, the type that a fisherman would use. But when a ship rolls around, it's the one thing that won't smash. Threw it into a steel mug, and I tasted it, and I genuinely remember going, oh, there's something to this. There's something very, very interesting here. And there's something I kind of wanted to see a little bit more about. So Heel of the Hunt, we finished the bottle that day between 3 of us. And then when I got back to Cork, where the naval base is in Ireland, I kind of started to get a bit more into whiskey. And I suppose that's how it all ties into tonight. Is that's where I got my love of whiskey, was the Cork Whiskey Society, basically.
So your first experience was on a Navy ship. And then eventually you're now working in the Irish whiskey industry, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But I do anything that combines whiskey, ships, Cove, Cork, where I'm from. I like the story already. You can't go wrong with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be the first sailor to fall in love with alcohol, I suppose. But yeah, there was something about the spirit, and I see Conor Ryan is on the stream there. Conor has a lot to answer for. I packed my bags from the Navy and decided, this whiskey thing, this is for me. After being in the Cork Whiskey Society for a couple of years, and it was just the passion of the guys. It just got into me, and from that point onwards, I never really looked back. So I've been in the industry for the last few years. Then after that, but it was just the passion of the guys down in Cork and the knowledge they have and what they were sharing, and there was no turning back once I had that first sip, I suppose.
Allan, you're not a native Irishman. You're an American who has fallen in love with Irish whiskey. Help us understand the first time you thought to yourself, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, so for me, I was not a whiskey drinker at all. And back in 2007, we organized a family and friends trip to Ireland, the classic get on the tour bus and travel the country kind of thing. But when we first landed, as anyone that flies over from here knows, you tend to get in very early in the morning, and nothing's really open, including the hotels. So we found ourselves kind of walking around Dublin, and one of the first things we came across was the Celtic Whiskey Shop, and they were doing samples. So we, this was probably early mid-morning at the latest. We were sampling whiskey at the Celtic Whiskey Shop. So that was probably the first introduction to it, and a few different kinds. I can't remember all of them. I know one of them, though, because it had just come out at the time, was the new Connemara. So that was kind of the first thing. And then we did the classic tourism things. But, I think the next step was taking the tour at Bow Street, Jameson, and, learning about how it's made and getting to sample it. And at the time, their tasting really focused on what is the difference between Irish whiskey, Scotch, and bourbon. So that was really a kind of an education to it all. And then I think what kind of sealed, and then we of course traveled the country and continued to sample along the way. But probably what sealed the deal for me was bought the book, your guest last week, Peter Mulryan's book, and read that on the plane ride home, which really at the time, went into a lot of in-depth on how whiskey's made and the history of it. And that kind of that coupled with the trip just kind of made me, really fall in love with everything about it. So that was really kind of the first introduction. And then from there, as you said, it's been a journey, and it's evolved from there, from the casks to the society and things like that. But it was kind of just a baptism by fire, and it's been all good from there.
Man comes off plane in airport, heads to Celtic Whiskey Shop, drinks whiskey. Yeah. I think this is an oft-repeated story.
I was going to say,
many people.
Right, it's not that original a story, but it is the story. It's a funny thing is, we had the Celtic Whiskey Shop, I think, was on the list of places to visit. However, it wasn't like we made a beeline for it, because I think we were literally just kind of walking around Dublin looking for stuff to do, and just kind of happened upon it by circumstance. So
it's funny how that happens, isn't it?
Yeah. So
Michael, you how did you first hear about the Cork Whiskey Society? Because that's the society that got you more in love and more passionate about Irish whiskey. How did that come about?
Yeah, they were the guys that got me hooked. I literally came back to Cork, and I just stuck it into Google. I was like, Whiskey Society's Cork, and these guys, the Cork Whiskey Society, came up, and I went, okay, cool. I looked at it. The tastings were, there was nothing too expensive or pricey about the tastings. And I remember the first one I went into, I was like, oh, everyone's very new. Okay, this whiskey thing. Okay, they're explaining kind of the notes. They're explaining a little bit of history. There's a little bit of a story to this as well. And it just made it so simple for me, to kind of get into it. And it was the fact that the guys who were there in the Cork Whiskey Society had so much knowledge and so much passion as well, that they just imbued it to everybody that was in the room. And I think it's impossible to attend some of their tastings around the country with various societies and not fall in love with the spirit. But yeah, just genuinely remember the passion of the guys in the room and just the backstories they had. As we used to call Eric Ryan, who anyone knows Eric Ryan from the Cork Whiskey Society, used to call him the Oracle, because anything you wanted to know about whiskey, Eric would know it. And it was just crazy levels of detail and stuff that the lads used to go into, and crazy tastings as well that nobody else was doing in the world, let's say, probably.
I was at an event in Cork in November up at the military barracks, and Laurie, who's a member of the Cork Whiskey Society, he had invited me up to the barracks for a whiskey event, and I ran into a guy there. His name is JP. You might know him in Cork.
I know JP well. JP
is. I hadn't met JP before. JP, you might be on here now. If you are, hello. But you said something hilarious to me that night. You were explaining to me he was explaining to me all the tastings that he'd been to as part of the Whiskey Society, and he leaned into me and he asked me, "But what's the catch?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "We get access to all this whiskey, and we get access to all these people. What's the catch?" And I said, "What do you mean, what's the catch?" And he said, "Well, surely we can't just get all this and there's no catch." And I said, "Well, it doesn't seem to be that there's a catch. There's just really nice people who want to share their love for Irish whiskey. And that's what it seems to be. Like, it doesn't seem that there's a catch, does there?"
No, not at all. And the generosity of the guys who pull a lot of bottles from their own collection sometimes to put into tastings and that kind of stuff. It's just a great community, you know, and you see a lot of the same guys kind of sharing knowledge across different societies and stuff as well. And it's just, it's just what forms the bond across Irish whiskey. And I think it's an essential part of it.
Allan, you came back. You luckily managed to find the plane after your trip to the Celtic Whiskey Shop. You managed to find the plane back to Boston. At what point? What was the timeline between starting to discover whiskies like Connemara and then wanting to become more involved in Irish whiskey beyond that?
Yeah, so I think the years since that first trip, we made return visits each year, which I think increased my exploring of the whiskey. But then I think what happened, a couple of events that occurred, 2009, I want to say, that the Irish Whiskey Society in Dublin formed. And from there, we started in 2010 as their first chapter. And we pretty much modeled after them. And, you know, for me, it was a kind of a solicitation on Facebook to come meet at a pub if you're interested. And it seemed like a great way to meet new people, make friends, people that liked Irish whiskey. You know, there were probably 7 or 8 of us that showed up that first night. And, you know, the rest is history, as they say. But I think, you know, from there, we, you know, were modeled after the start in Dublin, and, you know, things have evolved from there. But that's how it all started, really. You know, and from there, I think things started happening more, because back then things were a lot more quiet than they are now. There were only 4 distilleries. You know, and then Dingle opened, and then Whiskey Live started, which was a big event at the time. And anyone who was there at the original one about 10 years ago, the very small room, very few vendors. It's come a long way. It's amazing. But, you know, even back then, just being able to walk around and meet the people involved in the industry and the distillers, and then when Dingle opened and things like that. So there was just a lot happening even then. Now it's at a furious pace, but back then it was just kind of cool to be part of something that was re-emerging at the time. And, you know, being able to meet the people and talk to people about whiskey and just socializing, that kind of thing, made it very appealing.
Allan, was that the biggest impetus for you in trying to create a society in America? There was an exciting movement that's starting to take shape? But I mean, in 2010, there wasn't a movement. There was, to your point, 4 distilleries. Was it that what were you trying to recreate in Boston that you maybe had found in Ireland?
Yeah, I think, and I don't want to take credit, because I was I guess co-founded, but, Rich Nagel founded it with us that first night, and it was his initial vision. But I think what we were trying to do was to, have fun, not take ourselves too seriously. I think we all enjoyed Irish whiskey to a certain extent, but we wanted to learn more about it. We didn't want to be, at the time here in America, I think there was not a stigma, but there was some people might have been intimidated by the idea of single malt Scotch and being exclusionary a little bit. And, you had intimidating, maybe a better word, in terms of, so we wanted to be pretty open, not take ourselves too seriously, try to educate people along the way, and, really just try to like maybe replicate the pub atmosphere back in Ireland, to allow people just to come together and enjoy a whiskey, and like you said, there weren't a lot available here at the time. And even some that weren't available in the pubs. So part of what, we were really doing at the beginning was trying to just introduce whiskeys to people that they may never have heard of. They weren't seeing in the stores at that point. They weren't on the shelves in the bars. So we were really trying to promote as many, because even though there were limited distilleries, there were still a decent amount of offerings, but you wouldn't know it if you weren't looking for it. So
right.
So that was really, we had to get creative in the beginning. We would do tastings every month, and you had limit. It wasn't like you had 5 new releases that you could offer every month. So we got creative with different. I remember back in the early days, we did a battle of the Johns, and we just did a Jameson lineup versus a Powers lineup, blind kind of to see what, and at the time everybody was a Jameson lover. No one really even knew what Powers was, and the takeaway from that tasting was Powers won out. So that was, so it was kind of, those are kind of the old days, the fun days where we did things like that, and made people kind of really introduce them to Powers and realize, oh, this is great. So little things like that, I think, and along the way is, that's what we were trying to do at the beginning.
I don't think it can be overstated how small of a Irish whiskey world it was back in 2010, sadly. And for those who've joined since 2010, who've happened upon Irish whiskey, who've fallen in love with it over the past few years, you're finding a very different world today than Allan found back in 2010. And so what I'm most interested in this conversation is we have people like Allan who are out there flying the flag before it was popular to do so, and probably was a lot harder to get people's attention back in 2010 than it is now. And isn't that real passion when we're seeing people who are giving their time and their talent and their resources to share their passion. And what it highlights to me is how much more than just the drink in the glass Irish whiskey is, because we wouldn't do it just for the drink, because we can get drink many different ways. There's something bigger there. And so that's really fascinating to me. Michael, we chatted during the week, and I asked you about the Irish Whiskey Societies in Ireland, and there have been many that have popped up over the past couple of years. Even in the last 2 years, I think many have popped up. And you put together a list of a number of those Irish Whiskey Societies and associations that are doing interesting things. I wonder if you could lead us through a couple of those, and let's have a little chat about those that are doing interesting things in Ireland. And for those of you who are in America, I'm sure when you next go to Ireland, these Irish Whiskey Societies will be delighted to have you come to an event. And then vice versa, when the Irish Whiskey Society in America does events, they'd only be too happy to have the Irish join in. So I think it's good for us to learn on both sides about what's happening in the Irish whiskey world. So Michael, who should we start with?
We could start with one of the newer ones. You could start with Waterford, for example. Okay. So you have the guys in Waterford, Val and Michael down in Waterford, and they're one of the more recent additions to the Irish Whiskey Society market. And now Waterford is fast becoming a capital of distilling in Ireland with Blackwater, with Waterford Distillery. And the guys are doing a lot of stuff down there, and they're getting some really good tastings. I mean, I know some of the Irish Distillers guys, Jer's been down to them a lot. He's been doing some great tastings down with them. And it's just great to see where I'm from, the Southeast, getting a bit more into whiskey, because in the Southeast between Waterford, Kilkenny and Willie down in Wexford, you're seeing this big injection of interest into whiskey. So it's just a very exciting time to be in the Southeast of Ireland and doing stuff with whiskey. Val is absolutely, he's plowing away there down in Waterford, doing a great service for everybody, just getting some phenomenal tastings down there. And they're only 1.5, 2 years old, I suppose. Great
to see what's happening in Waterford. And like you say, 2 amazing distilleries popping up. We've We've had both of them on live streams over the past 2 weeks, launching Blackwater Distillery, launching Velvet Cap, and Ned Gahan last week on the live stream, head distiller at Waterford. A lot of interest on Waterford right now, and I think a Waterford Whiskey Society has popped up at just the right time to get a bit of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the guys are they're going to be spoiled for choice, because if you know that if a Waterford are doing a release or Blackwater are doing a release, who are they going to go to first with some samples or a bit of, what do you think of this, lads? You know, they're going to be going straight to the Waterford Whiskey Society. So yeah, I think those guys are going to have an exciting time for the next few years anyway.
Brilliant. Who's next on our list, our hit list?
Let's go. I suppose we go down to Dingle. We go down to Kerry for the night.
Down to Dingle. Great. What's happening in Dingle?
Dingle, as far as I know, and again, you have Peter White, it's basically an offshoot of the Irish Whiskey Society, and you have Peter White running the Dingle chapter down there with Finn. And they're just doing great stuff. They run, the best thing the lads do, and I hope Peter doesn't mind me picking this out, is that they do an ambassador's tasting every year, and they have done for the last 3 or 4 years. So what they do is they call down about 6-7 different ambassadors or people who work for different whiskey companies in Ireland and call them down, and everybody brings a sample, everybody brings a bottle, and they swap all the samples around. And so I've done it for the last couple of years, and you're up on stage, and so you're getting a sample, you don't know what it is, and you're kind of trying to talk people through it. And like, nobody in the room knows what it is, and you're just having the crack talking people through it, and we're all slating one another, having the crack. And it's just a really good night for learning about different whiskies and maybe dropping some of your preconceived notions about different distilleries as well, because I always think that about a blind tasting, that you're always going to learn a little bit, and you're always going to let your guard down a little bit, and you might find out something you didn't think about a whiskey. But the lads are doing some great stuff down there, and Dingle is a long drive from anywhere, really. You know, it takes 5 hours to get down there from Dublin, and for the guys, for Peter and the guys to get so many people down every year, I think it's phenomenal. Like, it just speaks to how good the events are down there every year.
I'm convinced the creation of that chapter was solely to spend more time in Dingle, for no other reason, just to go to Dingle. Allan, you're no stranger to Dingle, mm-hmm. and you've got a Dingle founding fathers hammer hanging on your back wall. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to come back to you and grill you on that. You're not getting away without talking about that.
Okay.
Michael, give me one more Irish Whiskey Society. We have many more to go through, but I want to get onto the American side as well.
Maybe we pick out the Aviators then. So the Aviators, they are some of the OGs in terms of Irish Whiskey Society. So the Aviators are around since about 2013, and they have a great website. All the information's up there. But if you take the Dublin Airport is one of the biggest sales areas for Irish whiskey, because you think about how many people are passing through Dublin Airport, passing through the terminals, going back to America, going back to all parts of the world. So I think in 2013, some of the guys went about setting up a whiskey society, and definitely they were some of the early converts to how well a whiskey society can be done, or you know what the advantages of it. Because you look at the Powers release, the Powers Aviators release back a few years ago and stuff. And the interesting thing about the Aviators, though it's not all made up of airport staff, you know, obviously a lot of the early joiners were predominantly airport staff, and this is actually my closest whiskey society, and to my shame, I actually haven't been to an event yet. So I will have to rectify that in the next few months, I think.
I love a whiskey society formed by staff of an airport. I think there may be no other whiskey society like it in the world. It's pretty unique. And I see them doing great trips. They do trips to distilleries. I saw them down in Napo Castle last year and a number of other places. So it looks like they do some fun kind of outings to distilleries, not just meeting in bars or pubs either.
Yeah, they're super active in terms of what they're doing. I think it's great. Yeah. Nice.
Allan, I want to spend some time talking about this side of the pond. The two of us are here, albeit on different coasts at the moment. Tell me what year, so the society was started, is it 2010 the society was founded?
Yes.
So help us understand, give us some background on what the society does, on the membership, on where your members come from, how it's structured, and help our American audience understand a little bit more about it.
Sure. So, we started in 2010, modeled really after the original chapter in Dublin. So we were located primarily in the Boston area, and we did that model for several years. We would have regional tastings kind of just circulating around different pubs in the area on a monthly basis. But I think, as we were talking about before, we the recession kind of hit, I think, both countries, and there, with the limited distilleries and offerings, we kind of noticed a little bit of a slowdown. So we shifted our model and our focus a little bit, and we effectively went national and started using the increasing social media platforms a lot more, and changed from a kind of an annual membership dues kind of thing to a system where we just basically offered lifetime, one-time memberships. Which, the idea was we just wanted to grow the membership and get people more involved. So I think we're up to close to 40 states now are represented around the country, members from 40 different states. And the idea was to keep building the masses so that the more people we have, the more things we can ultimately do. Right now, what we offer is, being part of that community. People get membership gifts, for lack of a better term. We kind of what we try to do is we're really trying to promote and educate for those who are interested all about Irish whiskey. So what we did is we've really been partnering up with a lot of the either vendors or distillers or other representatives of Irish whiskey. So, we got in early with the two-hour glass, which I think a lot of people now know. But, again, when we first started out, the only thing you were drinking out of then was really the Glencairn. So we, again, try to promote Irish whiskey and Irish whiskey related items. So, the two-hour glass, we got it branded. We've partnered up with places like Dingle Crystal, which offers a lot of whiskey related beautiful crystal, and just working with the distillers and stuff. So kind of the idea is you get into the society, and you're part of that community. And, in the short term, I think we're kind of growing along with the industry, and that's changing a lot. So, mid to longer term plans are to do at least annual trips to visit the distilleries, to do bottle releases, and to, so it's kind of trips, bottlings, and eventually to get back to doing tastings once we have the numbers where we can support doing regional tastings. So that's kind of the longer term goal. And it's gotten a lot easier now that there are more distillers and there are more offerings, so that we can now start that process to get to do bottlings and to secure casks at different distilleries and things like that. I know we're going to talk about that, but so that's kind of what we're doing. We're doing a lot of things behind the scenes. We're growing the numbers, in the hope with we get this COVID thing back to normal to some degree, and we can get back to our planned bottle release and trips, because that's been old a little bit at this point. But that's the idea. I think our limit here to some extent is we don't have the access to all the distilleries. We have the brand ambassadors, which is great, but you don't have the distilleries at your back door. So the idea is to try to eventually bring people to them. And in the meantime, what we try to do is to bring access to the things that are over there through just partnering up with a lot of these places, so that when people do make their own personal trips, they can represent, they've got their membership card, and that'll mean something when you show up at the, whiskey museum or a distillery or even a pub, that kind of thing.
if you are in the United States and you're not a member of the Irish Whiskey Society of America, you should log off this live stream now. I don't ever want to hear from you again. No, you should become a member, and here's why. Because Allan's been out there together with his team flying the flag for Irish whiskey in an unpaid capacity as an ambassador for Irish whiskey for a long time. Long before there were, you said 4 distilleries in 2010. I remember it well. Today we have 31 distilleries and more in construction. If you're not a member, it's such an easy thing for the price of a bottle of whiskey for a lifetime membership to get your membership card. Allan and his team are working on a number of initiatives that are going to be really interesting. You mentioned a potential bottle release and upcoming trips and things like that. But what's great about the Irish Whiskey Society, I'm a member myself, I joined up a couple of years ago, is you have this central organization that is flying the flag. It's separate to brands. It's an affinity group for people who are just have an affinity for Irish whiskey, who share a love for Irish whiskey. And I think that it's good to meet others who share our passion from across the United States. And I bet that there are members in the organization from your town or from your city that once this madness ends, you might be able to meet up with, and you might be able to meet them through the organization, through the association. So it's a no-brainer to join it. Michael, I want to come back to you because you've been doing some digging as our roving reporter in Ireland this week on the Irish Whiskey Societies and Associations.
I haven't been doing much roving, Barry. I'll be honest. I've been roving within 5K of the house, like.
You haven't been doing much reporting either, but it sounded good. Tell me, who is the next? What's the next Irish Whiskey Society on your list that you want to talk about?
I suppose we can go up to the wee north, up to Northern Ireland, and maybe we can have a look at the Belfast Whiskey Society, because that's a really interesting, again, one of the newer ones. Belfast Whiskey Club, and they are running their own online whiskey festival basically in the coming weeks and months. So Paul O'Kane, I know he was chatting recently on some of the live streams, and he was just talking about, they're running an online whiskey society, or online whiskey festival rather, and they have their own bottling for it and everything. And I just think it's when I'm talking to the guys from the north, it's basically they are calling out, they reckon the Belfast Whiskey Club is the greatest club on the island of Ireland. Obviously everybody in their own club will debate that, but they reckon, and it is also the harshest whiskey club, because when an ambassador comes up, they will actually rate the whiskey in front of said ambassador as well. So you would want to have a thick skin when you go up there with a whiskey and you're presenting it to the lads, because in front of you, they will go, it's a 6, it's a 7, it's an X, it's a Y. So yeah, you need to have a thick skin to be dealing with the lads in Belfast, I think.
They also just launched a book club, which is a thinly veiled excuse for drinking whiskey, I'm pretty sure, but it's novel nonetheless. Do we have? We might have some members. Joe McGowan might be online there.
Jamie Cotter's on there. I see him.
So I saw that being advertised this week. A book club, monthly book club, a book to read and a whiskey to drink. I think it's a good way to get either a bit of literature into you or a bit of whiskey into you. But either way, you'll probably be better off after it. So I like the innovation.
You may not remember the book afterwards, but you'll certainly remember the whiskey.
And there they have a cleverly placed bottle of Redbreast on a book, which tells me that they're serious. That's all I need to know.
It writes itself, basically, Barry. It's very innovative.
So the Belfast Whiskey Club, check them out. They also have I don't know how they managed to secure this, but they have the greatest whiskey club domain name, which is just whiskeyclub.com. And I don't know how they managed to get that. But I'm sure they're getting some good traffic for that. And I love their website. They're doing great things. So if you're in Northern Ireland, check that out.
Yeah, and I know Joe McGowan is doing some great work up there with the lads as well. And Down is fast becoming one of the distilling capitals of not even Ireland, of the world. There's about 6 different distilleries in Down at this point. So they have plenty of experience and plenty of different distilleries to draw on between Hinch and Cologne and the various distilleries up there now as well. So it's very cool. It's very cool.
Right. Yeah, lots happening in Northern Ireland. Who else have we got on the Irish list and on the island of Ireland that we want to pay special attention to?
I suppose we can shoot back down to County Clare and down to the Ennis Whiskey Club down in County Clare.
Let's do that.
So yeah, I remember talking to Eric. So Eric Flynn is one of the driving forces behind the Ennis Whiskey Club. I remember chatting to him years ago when the Cork Whiskey Society was, it was up and running and it was well established, but it wasn't huge. And I remember sitting beside Eric at a taste and he was telling me he had this Ennis Whiskey Club and they all met up and they did a lot of, they had a meal and they had some whiskies and they talked about it. And I was just thinking, like, how difficult is it to run a whiskey club in a reasonably small rural town in Ireland? Like, and I just think it's a phenomenal job to get the interest, to get the guys, to consistently get the knowledge and stuff. And Eric, who works for JJ Corry, of course, so he does have the knowledge. But it's just great to see whiskey clubs in smaller places in Ireland because, if you're in a small town in Ireland, sometimes there ain't that much to do. And I am from one myself, so I can sympathize.
And I know that Eric has been flying the flag for Irish whiskey for a long time and has been making connections in County Clare and has continued that, like you said, with JJ Corry, which is great to see. I'm moving on here to a sip of something else. I want to ask you both then what's in your glass as well. I'm moving on to Powers Gold Label in my lovely Powers glass. Allan, what's in your glass at the moment? What are you sipping on?
I just finished John's Lane from Powers, one of my favorites, and I'm going to be moving on to. I can talk more about it in a minute when you bring up the casks, but I'm moving on to a Dingle offering.
Nice,
an exclusive Dingle offering.
Excellent. I look forward to talking about that. Michael, what's in your glass?
I have the Pierce Line 7, which Michael Carr sourced for me and helped me sort out who works for Pierce Lines. But yeah, I just think it's a cracking whiskey, and I think Pierce Lines is one of I don't think they get enough credit for being one of the distilleries that actually have their own malts in their whiskies as well. You know what I mean? So they're a little bit ahead of the game, and I just don't think they get enough credit. I think this is a cracking whiskey, So
it's a lovely whiskey.
Beautiful distillery as well. Nice tour.
Absolutely is. And I think I saw in the comments earlier that the distillery will be opening up at the end of June. Now that which is good news. I think they were one of the first to notice it first to announce it. Sorry, that they're opening up now that some restrictions have been opened up or have been removed. And I should have mentioned that in whiskey news, but it's more Irish news. There's been some relaxing or announced relaxing of the lockdown in Ireland, and pubs with food will be starting to serve drink as well near the end of June, and those that don't serve food but just serve drink towards the end of July. But I think some people count a slice of lemon as food, so it'll be an interesting one to watch.
A packet of crisps and an old packet of peanuts would be grand, Barry. Like,
that's right.
Get in there. Well, keep your social distance. Have your drink. Have your pint in your whiskey. You'd be grand.
That's right. Michael, we have a couple of other outstanding Irish whiskey clubs I know you wanted to spend a little bit of time on before we get to casks. Who is next on your list?
I suppose jump over to Kilkenny, the Kilkenny Whiskey Guild again, back down in the southeast, my own part of the world. So the Kilkenny Whiskey Guild is kind of an interesting one because it's structured a little bit differently to some of the other whiskey clubs. Again, they're around for about 3 years. There's 11 venues in Kilkenny involved in the whiskey club between, I think it's about 10 bars, one off license. And it took them a year to put the structure together and decide on everything and agree on all the terms. So you have Jim Rafferty from the Dillon, you have Eddie Langton there from Langton's, obviously. Cyril Briscoe, who kind of runs a lot of the marketing side for them, and Chris Hennessy, who a lot of us will know from the Dillon Bar. So they're some of the head bottle washers down there. But the guys do really cool events because each month they go from bar to bar to bar of the guys who are involved in the Kilkenny Whiskey Guild. And each one kind of offers different things, whether it's food pairings, whether it's signature serves, whether it's older drams, what drops, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, you'll see the different bars kind of have something different to offer. Whereas with a lot of the other whiskey societies, it's not so much about the venue. It's just about it is about the tasting itself, and the venue comes secondary. With the guys in Kilkenny, they're showcasing the best venues that Kilkenny has to offer. And for anyone who hasn't been to Kilkenny, it is an absolutely cracking city for a pint and a whiskey and a night out, like, you know.
100%. And we had Chris Hennessy, of course, joined us a couple of weeks ago to talk about Aqua Vitae and to talk about Kilkenny's rich history when it comes to Irish whiskey. And for those who weren't part of that live stream or don't know the connection between Kilkenny and Irish whiskey, this short little video might be of help to you. So there we have a little video pulled from the Kilkenny Whiskey Guild's page. Just a reminder that Kilkenny is the home of Irish whiskey. It is where the first recorded distillation happened, and they will claim that as much as Cork claims everything else in the world that's good.
I mean, they do have a certain amount of claim on it. Chris Hennessy has delved enough into history that anyone else who wants to prove otherwise will have a job on their hands.
Sipping Aqua Vitae, burning witches. That's how. That should be your LinkedIn profile. I think that's a good one. So that brings us. Speaking of all things that are the best in the world, that can only mean one thing, Michael. That can only mean that you're moving on to the greatest county in Ireland. Where might you be taking us?
I'll take you down to the Cork Whiskey Society, and I lived in Cork for 5 and a bit years. And it kills me a little bit how much I love the Cork Whiskey Society, because anybody from Cork will instantly assume that anything from Cork is, by virtue of the fact it's from Cork, the greatest thing in the world.
Right.
I can see Barry. Yeah, what's your issue with this? But in fairness to the lads in the Cork Whiskey Society, I will always maintain they are hands down greatest whiskey society I've ever seen, been involved with, attended any tastings. They're just some class stuff, like, you know.
So talk about the society a little bit.
Yeah. So I contacted Conor Ryan just to make sure I had all my facts straight, because it's a few years since I lived in Cork, and I just wanted to make sure. So you can see there, established 1618. It was a little bit after that. It was 2013 that the guys in Cork established it. And Liam Murray, anyone who doesn't know Liam Murray is El Presidente. He is the top man in what became the Cork Whiskey Society. So they were initially a chapter of the Irish Whiskey Society, and between the jigs and the reels became the Cork Whiskey Society. And Liam Murray was very much the driving force behind that. So Liam was involved in the Irish Whiskey Society. He was involved in tastings down in Kilkenny. So the wine centre in Kilkenny and Dillon Bar. And then he came down and he came to the Cork Whiskey Society, and he enlisted the Ryan brothers, no relation, Eric and Conor, and he brought them under his wing and into the fold. And between the three of them, they kind of drove it from there, and they made it what it is. And some of the tastings that the guys have done over the years, if you go onto their page, their website, and look at the tastings that they've done over the years, they're all up there. And they've done redbreast tastings. They've done redbreast tastings from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all together. And for me, working in the whiskey industry and going to work in the whiskey industry, it's such a benefit, because when you can see how a spirit tasted in the 50s and the 60s in Ireland, it just gives you an ability to talk about the differences in the spirit, how you used to take a much wider cut off the still, how you're getting those kind of leathery, oily notes, and how it's developed to now. And you know, the guys were pains to point out the fact that when the club started in 2013 and they started getting a lot more members in 2014, most of the members are still there and they're still involved. And it is, again, all about the members down in Cork. In addition to that, they switch around the venue every tasting, and basically they were at it every month. It was almost, I think it was it was almost 2 a month before the lockdown came in. And the venues, again, are just so appreciative and so helpful, because there's so many people who are in the society who work in the trade. So, you know, Eric Ryan and Connor, who I've already mentioned, and Liam, who I've already mentioned, all work in the trade. So Eric is he's a distiller in Middleton. Connor, who has his own bar in Kinsale. Liam, who would have worked in the off trade for many years. Omar, unfortunately, that's where I met Omar. He has been the bane of my life ever since. That's Omar of That's Dram Good fame, and I mean that. And
we love Omar.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings, but yeah, I've made some great friends in the Cork Whiskey Society, and just the knowledge and the passion of the guys. They can literally talk on any topic, and I think that's the great thing about the Cork Whiskey Society, is that they don't necessarily have to be brand led or whatever. They have different themes. And between the guys who are present in the society can just get up and basically talk on anything. If they're doing Scotch whiskey, they can get up and talk about how the stills in Glenfarclas were replaced back in the 80s and things changed or whatever it is. And then they can go on to Irish whiskey, go on to world whiskey. It's just a great bunch of lads. Great bunch of lads.
No greater compliment could be paid. A great bunch of lads. The reason I asked Allan and Michael to join me this evening was because there's only so far I think we can take our understanding of whiskey, our enjoyment of whiskey alone. And, when I've been doing these live streams every Friday, it's been introducing new people to new whiskeys. It's been bringing people together from different parts of the world. In some cases, people in the same town have met each other or found out about each other through these live streams. And these whiskey societies and associations do that on a grand scale. So if you're in the United States, I encourage you to reach out to the Irish Whiskey Society of America, and you'll find their details on irishwhiskeyusa.com. I know a few of you have already mentioned in the comments that you're going to go straight there and join up tonight. Before we came live today, Allan said that operators are standing by to take your details.
Yeah.
And those operators are Allan, I think.
It's a direct line to his phone.
Yeah, it's on mute.
If you start to hear Allan's phone dinging now, it's all the new membership signing up. But I encourage you to join the Irish Whiskey Society in America. And if you're in Ireland, I encourage you to find your local chapter, local society, local association, and support them. Because what you're finding, the founding members of societies and chapters and associations are the greatest enthusiasts and ambassadors. And they often can't share their knowledge without people who are willing to listen, and they can't get access to whiskies from distilleries and get access to brand ambassadors without people to support them. So I think it's important to support our local associations, and even those that aren't local to us. If we happen to be in a city, we might be able to visit an event that's happening. So I'm really excited at seeing the growth of societies and chapters around the world. And I'm excited, Allan, to see the next stages of what's going to happen once COVID is over for the American chapter of the Irish Whiskey Society. I think you've got some good things in the pipeline.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It'll be nice. I'm still hopeful that we'll be able to do a bottling this year, which would be our inaugural release. So we'll, again, got to work through kind of things are opening up again, so let's keep our fingers crossed with that. But definitely that, and trips, and in the meantime, we want to just be, if nothing else, kind of the USA perspective information. One of the informational sources, let people know about new releases or distilleries or things like that. Place where they can come, with questions or, I guess one of the things I encourage is members to just reach out, because it's maybe not as fun, but one of the fun things about whiskey is just talking about it, and just the even if you're sitting having a whiskey and talking about it, it's great. Even if you're not having a whiskey, just sometimes, at least I find talking about it is a lot of fun too. It kind of gets back to why do you like Irish whiskey? It's not all about just the drink.
It's not, and I've seen some of the comments being shared about why people like Irish whiskey, and the stories that are being shared are human stories, events, examples, incidents that happened, people they've met, towns they've been to, pubs that they loved. These are stories that are bigger than the drink themselves, which is fantastic. And Allan, just looking at your background there shows how you have recreated Ireland. You've created Irish territory in your home, such as being the love you have for Ireland and Irish whiskey, which is remarkable. I want to talk about your cask in a second. But before I do, I'm going to go over to Michael, who had a little sample of a cask that he has. So we're talking about these journeys that we're all on in Irish whiskey. And if you told me 5 years ago that I would own a bottle of whiskey that cost $100 or €100, I would have laughed you out of the room. I would have thought that was the most ridiculous thing to have ever said. Even a bottle that was 40 or 50, I would have thought that was madness. I do have a bottle that's €100 today. I have a few of them in the shelf here behind me. Yeah, the secret's up. But this Irish whiskey journey can be a bit of an expensive journey sometimes when we really get into it, but it can be a rewarding one too. The reason I bring this up is because I discovered as we were talking during the week that all three of us happen to own our own casks of Irish whiskey. We've all separately, individually, in different distilleries invested in casks of Irish whiskey. And it's been a topic that's been of interest to people in the Irish Whiskey Fans of America Facebook group over the past few months. And I know a lot of people are curious about it. And I'm going to just, let's have a discussion about how we got to that stage. And I'll start with you, Michael. You surprised me by sharing online a sample of something from your cask. Tell us what you have and where it came from.
Yeah, so I don't know if you can see it with the light. Hold it up the camera. Yeah, so basically, I can talk you through it anyway. Mine is a pot still. So it is from Tipperary Distillery. It is actually barley from the Tipperary Distillery's farm, taken and distilled in Great Northern Distillery. And then the guys in Tipperary managed to source in an Oloroso sherry cask for me that had held sherry for 8 years. So when I heard that, I was kind of like, that's class, because when you see a lot of the sherries these days, or the sherry cask finished whiskies and stuff these days, the sherry cask might have held sherry or might have, it was seasoned with sherry, whereas 8 years is a good long time to have had sherry in it. So when I heard that, jumped at it, and they put that pot still in for me, and literally last week just received this. So it's 2 years old. So it's March 2018. So pot still, sherry butt, and cask number 14 down in Tipperary Distillery. So Jennifer absolutely sorted me out with that. But about 2.5 years ago, I suppose, 3 years ago almost now at this point, I just got a notion that I wanted to not only work in the industry, but wanted to have a little bit of skin in the game as well. And I thought the best way to do that was to have a cask, to have something that's going to sit there, that's going to mature, and that I can taste periodically. And I brought it with 2 friends as well. And it's just a great talking point. And, at the end of it, it's a sherry butt. So at the end of it, we're going to be left with 500 odd bottles of whiskey. So, I mean, what are we going to do with those? We're going to have a lot of friends. We're going to have a big, massive party. I don't know, but I got this during the week and I tasted it this afternoon, and I was delighted with it. Genuinely just delighted with it, with the color, with the, so that's 2 years in Oloroso, and just the color, the taste, everything. I could just see it's going in the right direction. I was just really happy about it. I suppose, Barry, to answer your question, just wanted to own a little piece of history, and a little moment in time, and that's how I ended up buying a cask.
And Brian Houston asks, do you have any idea how long you'll keep it aging for?
I think my idea would be that if we look back at the history of pot still whiskey, pot stills were generally drank reasonably young, so 5, 6, 7 years. So hopefully around that kind of 7-year mark, because I can already see that there's a huge amount of Oloroso influence on it and coming through. That if I leave it any longer than 7 years, it might just be Oloroso, it might just be sherry, and that's it. So I think around that kind of 7-year mark, but again, it just depends on how it ages, I guess. But that's kind of what I'm looking towards, I guess.
when you so this getting into the cask just to own a piece of Irish whiskey history or own a piece of Irish history is something I've heard a lot from people who are passionate about Irish whiskey. They want more than what's in the bottle. They want to be part of the process. They want to get in early, and it doesn't seem like, or it seems there's some people who are in it as an investment strategy as well. But if we go back to 2011, 2012, a new distillery was coming online down the southwest of Ireland, a small little town called Dingle. And Allan, I believe you heard the call, the carrion call to get involved in the Dingle Distillery. Help our audience understand how the Dingle Distillery was funded and what role you then played in that.
Yeah, so my family every other year visits Killarney and stays there for a week. And while we're there, we would visit Dingle. So I was familiar with that. And then I guess kind of going along with that, I want to say it was spring 2012 was the very first Whiskey Live before they switched to the later in the year calendar. But back then, I think, as I mentioned, it was very small because there were only 4 distilleries. But at that one, there was a new distillery there that hadn't even opened yet, and that was the Dingle Distillery. And that's where, again, because of the size, you could get around and meet everybody there and go to all the stands. And that's where I met Oliver Hughes, who was the principal behind going to open up a new distillery. Had all the brochures and the story behind it. And, I remember meeting him and just being taken by what his story was. Basically it was the Founding Fathers program, which, others have, I think, since modeled after. But it was the first 500 people to purchase a cask would not only get a cask of whiskey that they could either sell back or bottle or what have you down the road. But I think what drew me to it was the other components to be part of, kind of like being part of a society, being part of this group of people that would be on the ground floor of the first new distillery in Ireland in a long, long time, and I haven't regretted it at all. I still, don't have my whiskey yet. It's still aging, but right out of the gate, one of the first things probably, I think I took a visit to Dingle and they allowed me to pour my own cask. So that was great, just to be able to take part of right at the beginning, to be able to fill the cask. And then I think I returned home, and then they decided that it would be a good idea to actually launch a school and spend a week at the distillery. And I remember thinking, geez, I was just there. Can I go back? And people said I'd be crazy if I didn't go back. So I went back and I spent a week and got to meet people like Mary Ferreter and spend the week there in the distillery each day, learning about how they make whiskey and all the other parts of it. And then there was a big party at the end. And since then, they've had an annual gathering of all the Founding Fathers. So it's really been great to just be part of that. And since that time too, every time we go back, when I've brought friends and family to the distillery, they really roll out the red carpet and make a point of thanking the Founding Fathers for, providing that initial funding to allow them to kind of get the ball rolling. And then they started offering the gin and the vodka, which have been really successful. But in those early years, from what they say, that, the Founding Father program helped them to secure funding to help them kind of launch. The rest, I guess they say, is history. It's been very successful, and they've now been launching whiskeys that have been very successful and popular.
Right.
But yeah, so it's been nice to be there on the ground floor, and when you go there, your name's on the wall. There's also the bar in Dublin. You go in there and they've got the staves with your name stenciled in there. So it's just kind of nice to feel part of that whole thing, and they do a really good job of making you feel part of it and welcome and all that. So it's really been great.
Yeah. Allan, what combination of spirit and cask did you go for?
So I went. It's a single malt. At the time of the Founding Fathers program, it was just single malts initially. I was one of the first people involved in it, and I did the bourbon cask. And part of that, twofold, I think. One, I was a big Powers fan at that time from having, that was one of my favorites. So I liked the bourbon influence. And I think secondly, to Michael's point, I wasn't sure what I would do with so many bottles of whiskey if I did a sherry butt or a port. If I felt like the bourbon cask was a little bit more manageable, and do it at the cask strength, and then I only have to worry about maybe getting a few hundred bottles shipped back over to the States. So that was part of the decision making process too. I didn't know what I'd do with 500. 500 bottles is tough. I'd have to make a lot more friends in Ireland and give them away there.
I think we could find you 500 friends pretty easily. Yeah.
I think they're probably on the stream tonight, Barry. I think those bottles would go.
Yeah. But so it's, and I guess my cask I just celebrated a birthday. The cask celebrated a birthday this past weekend. It turned 7 years old. So I'm drinking I was supposed to be there next week. Can't make the trip for obvious reasons, but I'm drinking this is a 5-year from my cask drawing I took 2 years ago now. So I thought it would be break this out and have the 5-year, because I can't sample the 7-year this time of year. So it's coming along. We'll see. I was looking forward to being able to see how it's done the last 2 years, because now we're kind of getting into that sweet spot.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll see.
Some of the Dingle casks have, of course, already been bottled, and others are like yours, are sitting there sleeping peacefully and gracefully until they see their time in the glass. So you both have managed to try samples, obviously, from your casks. Allan, you've had more samples than anybody because of the age of yours. Michael, you're just starting to taste yours, which isn't yet whiskey. My cask, I've not had a sample of yet because it is far too young for that to happen. I recently bought a cask of single pot still from the West Cork Distillery, West Cork Distillers, and that was just laid down just 12 weeks ago. So it is a COVID cask, and it is it's going to sit there for. And I don't mean any anything by that beyond the fact that its timing is directly in line with COVID. But it's a single pot still bourbon barrel that I will hope to taste maybe in a year or every year, and I'm hoping to leave it there for 7 or 8 years maturing and see what happens with that one.
Yeah, the hardest part is patience.
Yeah, it's all about seeing what happens, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's I just want to say, Barry, that my name is also on the wall down in Dingle. I wrote it there in permanent marker the last time I was there. They don't know that, but it's there.
Let me look at some of the questions regarding casks. Steve Smathers, you're asking me to present a question to the panel. I'm not sure which question you're referring to. The comments are coming in quick and fast. I'm getting all the comments from Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So feel free to post the question there, and I will pose it. In regards to whether casks are a good investment opportunity, we will preface this answer by saying we're not here to give investment advice, and every investment should, of course, be considered and weighed up, and you should at least expect to lose every single penny. Allan, your thoughts on casks as an investment?
Yeah, I guess it would. I have nothing against it. I didn't go into it with that intention. I fully went into it with the idea that my investment was going to get me both a tangible benefit at the end in terms of the whiskey, as well as along the way, all the intangible benefits that I'm still enjoying. The trips over there and just meeting with the distiller and sampling the casks and all that. So I looked at it more as buying an experience that you're going to get whiskey at the end. I've got friends though that have done the same program and have sold the cask back and earned an investment on it. And I know other people have are looking to kind of reap the benefits on the back end by selling the bottles. For me, that I don't know. For me, that wasn't kind of what I was looking to do out of it. I was looking at it more as an experience. But given the growth of whiskey, I think it's not. It doesn't seem like it's a bad investment. Not giving any advice to anybody, but worst case, you've got something you can drink, I suppose, right?
That's it. As long as you're happy at the end that there's whiskey there, that you're happy that you paid for it, and you paid for it what you would be willing to pay if you bought it by the bottle or less, then I think it's a win. I didn't buy mine for investment. I have fully got the intention of sticking a Stories and Sips label on it and handing it out to friends at some point. Yeah. Michael, what are your thoughts on it as an investment strategy?
Yeah, I suppose a little bit different because there was 3 of us went in on the cast together because we got a sherry boat, so it was slightly more expensive. And I think my idea was I will definitely drink this at some point, but on my end, there's going to be 100 odd bottles, so 500 bottles, but 500 thereabouts between 3 of us. And I think the other 2 guys maybe had an idea in their head that perhaps we can sell this at some point. And I remember saying to them at one point, I was like, look, here's the crack. If we can sell this, are you happy to drink all of this? And they instantly went, yeah, absolutely no problem. And I was like, you happy to put your money in and that we will someday have maybe 500 bottles of whiskey between us of all the same whiskey and we can drink it? And they went, oh, that's not an issue at all. So look, I think at some point that thought crossed their head, but at the same time, I think you have to be prepared because if you see the amount of cask programs and stuff out there now, there are a lot of people, and you see comments coming in there that people have invested in casks, and even the fact that the 3 of us all have casks. There's going to be in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years time, there's going to be a lot of Irish whiskey casks floating around, and they're going to be very interesting. But there is going to be quite a lot. It's not going to be like it is right now, where there is I suppose a lack or not as many casks from different distilleries around. So I think buyer beware, basically.
Yeah, you could be fooled into some of the releases now because of the first ones. They're drawing a lot of interest. In 5 years, it may not be the case because they'll be kind of a dime a dozen when they're coming out potentially.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, the only thing is the market for Irish whiskey is always getting bigger. It's only growing and expanding. So look, it's all positive. Buy yourself a cask. If you can't sell it, you can drink it.
Exactly. You'll have plenty of friends forever.
That's it.
Or for a while anyway.
Until the whiskey's gone and then your friends will disappear.
Yeah. Well, then you hope you make another friend that has a cask.
That's right. You did raise a good point, though, that there are wildly differing cask prices throughout Ireland. I got my cask for less than $1,000, so about €900. And I know that there are some that are up as high as $6,500, maybe more for a cask. This is a personal choice, a personal decision as to whether you consider that a good investment strategy or not. You can buy a cask from the Middleton Distillery for as much as, I think, €600,000 for a cask.
I think there's some for about $1 million, Barry. If you get into it, I think there was a Marsala cask there for about £1 million euros. So how long is a piece of string, basically?
There's no wrong or right answer with this. Value is subjective, and the return on investment is subjective, and each to weigh it up themselves. But just know that the price of casks runs the gamut from, I think, as low as €700 or €800 all the way up to the $1 million plus, and everything in between. And I would suggest anybody to do your homework before you do anything, and be willing to lose it all and be left with buckets of liquid at the end of it. And if that's the worst case scenario, happy days.
Yeah, I think part of it is the connection you have too. Like if you visit a particular part of the country and there's a distillery there and you're going to visit it, you want, to me, if it's not exclusively an investment, it's probably better, because a lot of them are doing programs now. I know Powers Court Distillery is doing a great program, and if anyone who's been there and seeing the grounds there and what they're doing there, so if you can be part of something, I think it's all the better. And then it's not just a financial thing that you're waiting for, down the road. You're getting other benefits along the way, because waiting 7 or 8 years is kind of a long time. So it's nice to have a place to visit and to be part of it along the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. I definitely encourage that. Going to visit. It's a bit like buying a house without seeing it. You might not. You might prefer to see that the neighborhood you're living in. I think it's the same with a cask. I like to know the people behind it. I want to know that it's in good hands and that they've got a bit of a track record. I mean, for me, I waited a long time before I bought a cask because I didn't know enough about whiskey. I still don't know much, but I didn't know enough to know where to spend money. And eventually I realized, in West Cork, they're very good technically, and it's a great operation, and I can trust them to make a good whiskey. And over time, I'll have a nice pot still at an affordable price. So it took me some time. One of the questions that we got here, which I'll put up here, is asking what are some of the most accessible cask programs. Well, you can go directly to distilleries, of course, and then there's others. And again, this is a non-paid promotion. I have no affiliation with anybody, but I saw recently Celtic Whiskey Shop, Ali Alpine, who has been a cheerleader, a pioneer in the Irish whiskey world in Ireland, a Scotsman coming in to teach us Irish about Irish whiskey, just like John Jameson back in 1780. But he is running a cask program through Celtic Whiskey Shop, where you can get access to affordable casks through Great Northern Distillery, which I believe is an affordable program that includes getting samples every year, which I think is a lovely part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's super value as well. And look, the sample that I have here in front of me was distilled at Great Northern, and it's super. I'm really happy with the quality of the spirit, and I think some of the prices that the guys in Celtic Whiskey are selling out those casks for, if you are going to invest in a cask, it's a great option. But the other thing is for me, I guess I'm from Wexford, and if there was a distillery in Wexford, I would, I would sell every bottle I have so that I could buy a cask of Wexford whiskey. Waterford are releasing at Bannow Island, so Bannow Island being down kind of south of Wexford, they're releasing a Bannow Island edition, and you can guarantee yourself that I will be getting as many bottles of that as the wallet will allow. But I think there's a sense of place kind of thing as well. So I think you're lucky to be from Cork, Barry, that you have a bit of choice, and there's a couple of distilleries there.
The other thing too is, if you can't, because the prices vary and they can be, beyond people's means. But if you're part of a society, what we were talking about earlier, a lot of what you can do is, pool your money and you purchase a cask as a society, and then, then you kind of have your cask and you can get future bottlings that way. So there are a lot of ways with what Ali's doing at Celtic Whiskey, as well as being part of a society, you can get access to stuff even if you don't have a lot of money to buy your own.
That's a great point. That is a great point. Some of the comments here, I've not had a bad drop from Great Northern, Clonakilty and West Cork Distillery, people have laid down. Yeah, I was lucky enough to have choice in Cork. Of course, Michael, I had to buy from Cork, didn't I? But I couldn't possibly get anywhere close to Middleton prices, so I went for West Cork Distillers.
I'm surprised, Barry. How well the lock-in is going. I'm surprised that the money isn't pouring in, and buying that £1 million cask from Middleton,
Oh, you'd think the money would be pouring in. All right, printing money we are here every Friday night. Spending money putting all these whiskies out here every week, but it's well worth it. So I've got two questions for you both before I let you go. The first question is, I'll put it to you, Michael, first. Will you be looking to invest in another cask?
Between myself and yourself, Barry, yeah, I already have kind of laid down another one in the last 6 months. And potentially we'll be looking at maybe one more over the next couple of years. But yeah, for me, again, it's just a passion thing. And if I can get them at a reasonable price at something that I'm not kind of, between, it's me and a couple of friends who are looking at most of them. And if it's not too prohibitive, I think, there's no reason why you can't have a few, I'm currently single. I don't have a mortgage to pay for. So look, might as well spend it on something.
There's a good sales pitch for Michael there. He's single, he doesn't have a mortgage, and he's got whiskey.
There you go.
Well, I mean, single, not married, but not single, but
we get it. Okay.
Just in case she watches this back, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay.
Well, to get you excited about Wexford, David Stapleton, chairman of the Irish Whiskey Association, and also founder of the Connacht Distillery, says that he's only using Wexford barley at his place. He's trying to convert you there.
They're doing some cool stuff up there. I've had a little bit of the a few different little spirits from up there. So yeah, looking forward to tasting the new make and what's coming out of there in a couple of years' time.
Allan, are you considering any other cask investments either through the society or yourself?
Yeah, I think I'll never say no to doing it again myself, but right now I'm thinking more probably trying to do things through the society so we can have, I'd really like to be able to offer bottlings on a regular basis, kind of like what they've been able to do in Dublin. So that's kind of one of the goals. So I think now that there are just a lot more available, that would be my current thinking. And, maybe once I bottle my Dingle, I'll want to do it again myself. I think I'd want to look for a similar type of situation where there's more to it than just the whiskey.
Right.
But there's so many great places I've visited. Not all of them yet, but quite a few of them. Met some great people, and they all, everybody has a great story. So it's kind of, it's hard once you kind of go there, you see the place, you hear the story. It's hard not to kind of say, "Ooh, maybe maybe I do want to buy a cask." So never say no.
Absolutely. I think the same for me. The eyes will be open and looking at those that I'd like to be a part of the story of as well. I said I had 2 more questions, but now I'm going to make it 3 because, Michael, you are a former ambassador for the Midleton Distillery, and you had you learned a lot about the products there. I've been sipping on Jameson Black Barrel, and I wonder if you might be able to explain how this is a very different blend than other blends that we might be familiar with. It always it's complicated. It's complicated, but there's something to it.
Yeah, so I absolutely hate this question because there's about 8 different elements in Jameson Black Barrel, and because I don't work for them anymore, I can't get in trouble. So, but I think the unique element is the GPL, what they call the GPL. So it's grain pot line. So it goes, again, not 100% sure that I just want to try and get this correct. That it goes through a pot still twice, then onto the column still. So what you have is a grain whiskey, but it's an extremely sweet grain whiskey that's only made for about 2 weeks of the year. And it's specifically for Jameson Black Barrel. And Black Barrel, then when they talk about the grade 4, the alligator char that they use, those black barrels, that is the only element that goes into those casks or those barrels. And that is what gives it that kind of signature, very, very caramel, butterscotch, very, very sweet kind of notes that we would associate with Black Barrel. Because for me, it's a whiskey that is, similar to kind of bourbon notes to it, similar to something like, Buffalo Trace, which is one of my favorites. It's I think it's just a cracking whiskey, but it is a little bit unique in that sense. And there's about 6 other elements, but we won't get into those, Barry, because it is 1:30 in the morning.
It's quite detailed. It was explained to me similarly by Dave McCabe, the blender at Midleton, one night in a bar in Boston after the launch of Redbreast Small Batch. And what I picked up from it then was that it really is it's a pot still mash that goes through the pot stills and then goes through the column still, like you said, but it's using both malted and unmalted barley. It's not using a grain like a maize component, to my understanding.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So, but once it touches a column still, it becomes a grain whiskey, even though it's not made with maize as the rest of the grain whiskey in Midleton would be like,
I see. Interesting.
And the cool thing about that one is the previous market I used to work in when I used to work for Irish Distillers was in South Africa, and Black Barrel, or Jameson Select Reserve, was born in South Africa because South Africa still is, I think, the 2nd biggest market in the world for Jameson, and they wanted a kind of a more premium Jameson, a bit of a step up. And they came up with Jameson Select Reserve. So South Africa is the only country in the world where Jameson Black Barrel is still called Jameson Select Reserve. So fun fact for
interesting.
There you go.
Interesting. And I reckon this is the most Irish of blends to come out of Midleton. And I can say that because I also don't work for them. But I think that there's only Irish grain in here. If it's barley, then there's no maize. There's no Spanish or French maize. It's just barley, right? Irish barley. Or am I wrong?
I don't even know anymore, Barry, because I think Look, let's
leave.
Sure,
let's leave
sure.
it.
Why not, Barry?
Hold up the bottle that you do represent right now, though.
Yeah.
Show us what you are.
So
Michael represents Paddy.
Yeah. So I do. Thank you for getting that in before I get sacked. Yeah. No. So currently working for Paddy. So I work for a company in Ireland called High Spirits, who are the a subsidiary of Sazerac globally. So we own the Paddy label in Ireland, and it just started working for them. It was my 1 year anniversary 2 days ago. So yeah, really cool time.
Congratulations.
We're looking at kind of bringing the brand back up to number 3 in Ireland. So yeah, just bringing Paddy back, getting in front of everyone. And as a good Cork man, Barry, you know a lot about Paddy and Paddy Flaherty, so great brand.
Big fan of Paddy and the story, and excited to see what you guys come out with. Fingers crossed that there's something for us coming soon. Who knows? We'll wait and see. I still stare at my empty bottle of Paddy Pot Still Centenary Edition from 2013, and I cry a little tear.
Cracking.
That empty bottle.
Great whiskey. I have a little bit left, so next time you're in Boston.
Sounds good. Last question for you, Allan. What's your favorite Irish whiskey at the moment? What are you most interested in? What's got you excited right now?
Right now, I have my favorites that I've had for a while, and that would be Powers and Green Spot. But the one that's got me the most kind of excited now or lately has been what's been coming out of JJ Corry, and just the different things that Louise is trying with either the tequila, the mezcal, or the different blends. So that's been, and the fact that we can get them here in the States. So that's been, I've liked to see the innovation and what she's trying to do there. And that whole, and again, I'm kind of a sucker for the story and what they're, bringing the bonding back and all that. So I've been following that and really interested in what they're doing there. So that's been kind of lately, that's, those releases have been intriguing to me and stuff I want to sample.
Nice. Michael, that's your parting question as well. What are you interested in, apart from, of course, Paddy, which is a very interesting whiskey and remains so. But if you were to be interested in something else, what would turn your head?
Yeah, I'll give you 2 answers. I'll give you 2 different whiskeys. I think, like the rest of the Irish whiskey world, I'm eagerly looking forward to see what's coming out of Waterford. I think most of the Irish whiskey community is very excited to see what's coming out of Waterford. Mark Rainey has been talking about terroir for the last couple of years. So we're all very excited to see what is actually coming out. I have my bottle bought. I'm ready to go for the pilgrimage. I'm ready to get down to the Waterford distillery as soon as it opens back up. So that's definitely one. The other one is Cologne. Brendan up in Cologne, I think, and I know you had him on the show recently. Brendan's doing a cracking job. It's direct fire stills. They're tiny little stills. He's doing things old school. And I'm really, really looking forward to seeing what comes out of the distillery once it's aged, because I've had the new make. The new make is cracking, and he's doing some really, really interesting stuff up there. And yeah, that's the other one I'm really looking forward to. And I think it's they're definitely going to have a cult following across the Irish whiskey community going forward. So Waterford, Cologne.
I think the other thing that's exciting, Barry, too, I think in general, is the release now of all the new pot stills. So that because Middleton obviously does a great job with their lineup, but it's kind of cool to see so many of the distilleries now coming out with the pots. So we're going to have a lot more variety. So that's been kind of cool to sample those. So
Absolutely has.
That would be the other thing that I think is nice. I know just recently was able to get a bottle of the Drumshambo, with the oats and the Kilbeggan, so that's been great to be able to see what the new distilleries are doing with that style.
It's interesting, when I asked you both what your favorite whiskeys are right now, both of you said the same thing. I like what he or she is doing. And I'm hearing this a lot lately, and I've had the people who are doing interesting things I've had on the podcast and I've had on the live stream, because they're getting attention, and I'm firmly believing that it's because they hold very strong beliefs about how certain things should be done, even if it's contrarian, and maybe it's contrarian to how it's been done historically, and it's ruffling feathers. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think anything that ultimately pleases the consumer, I'd like to see the industry trending towards the consumer. But it's interesting that this doesn't in any way differ from what people have said they love about the Irish whiskey world. And Irish whiskey is the people, and the people that they've met, and the events that they've gone to, and friends that they've made. And so this Irish whiskey story is the human story of people doing interesting things. And I think we're drawn and attracted to people who do interesting things, like Killowen and Louise and Mark Rainier in Waterford, and obviously PJ Rigney in Drumshambo as well. So that's interesting. So I think the more people wear their beliefs on their sleeve, and I see every day new labels hitting the market in the United States for whiskeys that you couldn't tell from the label who's behind it, what's it about, because there's some leprechaun story or something on it. I would love to see more of these people coming to the fore saying, actually, I think it should be done this way, and here's why. And you'll either love me or you'll hate me. And so I love that trend, and I hope to see more risk takers coming through the ranks in the Irish whiskey world over the next few years.
Yeah, definitely. I think the transparency element, it's just throw your hand up, go X, it's X, Y, and Z, it's this, it's that. And I think, you know, people will in the whiskey community have a lot more respect for you and just be interested to see what you have to say and what you're doing, you know. And yeah, the Irish whiskey scene is only going to get more interesting over the next 4 or 5 years as everybody has more mature in spirit, as people are swapping spirit. I mean, we're seeing the first blended malts, seeing the first blended grains, you know, coming into the Irish market now. And I think that's just, it's fabulous. It's brilliant to see, like, you know.
Yep. Interesting time in the Irish whiskey world, and long may it continue, and hopefully COVID aside, the Irish whiskey world can recover and get back to the highs it was reaching at the end of 2019, and hopefully with the support on both sides of the Atlantic, and with membership of societies and people ordering in travel retail, we'll get back to that sooner rather than later. So, Michael, I know it's late. In Ireland, you have stayed up far longer than I asked you to, and I've gone on far longer than I expected to.
Enjoy it. I really enjoyed it, Barry. No, I really appreciate it.
Michael Cowman, Irish whiskey ambassador, representing High Spirits and the Paddy brand in Ireland, and Bon Vivant, a good enjoyer of life and a man of many shirts. Thanks a million for joining us. And what you all didn't see before you joined tonight is that when I first turned on my screen tonight, Michael was wearing a turtleneck. And he greeted me in a turtleneck and then pulled the turtleneck off in a Scooby-Doo move to reveal this shirt underneath.
It's your show, Barry. Didn't want to take the spotlight. But no, listen, I just want to thank you for having me on. And I want to say to anyone who's listening, if you want to reach out, I'm on Instagram. It's the Prince of Paddy on Instagram. Have to get the plug in there. And just reach out, give us a follow, and any questions, get in touch.
Let me type that up here, the Prince of Paddy, so everybody sees it. Go follow Michael on Instagram, the Prince of Paddy. He's very entertaining. He hosts really interesting things on Instagram stories, pub competitions and the like. You won't regret it, or you might regret it. I can't tell you which until you go follow him and find out. So, Michael, thanks a million for joining us. And also to Allan Dwyer, President of the Irish Whiskey Society of America. It's been an honor to talk to you as well. And thank you for sharing your insight and your knowledge, and for purposely constructing Dick Mac's Pub in your kitchen just for us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. But I'll come up with I'll go in the other corner of the room next time, give you a different atmosphere.
Okay, a different view. And Michael will probably find a different cupboard or a hot press to come from.
Yeah.
So those of you in the United States, go to irishwhiskyusa.com, become a member of the Irish Whiskey Society, support the Irish whiskey industry and what they're doing. Thank you, gentlemen. We will talk to you again soon. And thanks again for joining.
Cheers. I'll see you both for a pint at some stage. Hopefully.
Sounds good. Have a good night.
Absolutely, you will. Two gentlemen, one on either side of the Atlantic, each one from Ireland, one from the United States, joining to support Irish whiskey and fly the flag for Irish whiskey in their own way, which is great. And thrilled to have them on, and we'll have them back again soon if they're open to it. Brian says, great fun. Gents, it was indeed. David says it's worth staying up late for. David, we'll have to have you on here at some point. Jeff and Ronan and Greg all enjoying the conversation with the two gents. Yeah, great contributors to the Irish whiskey scene and the Irish whiskey world, and I'm really lucky to have managed to secure their time tonight. So I am down to my last drink. I'm on Jameson Black Barrel. As I mentioned to those of you who are joining late, I mentioned at the start, I didn't know how long tonight's live stream is going to go, purely because this week I had 4 wisdom teeth removed, and you may not see it up close, but my lips are like balloons, and I thought I will numb the pain with whiskey and go for as long as I possibly can, but I wasn't cancelling tonight. But I have struggled on with whiskey in my hand through the live stream, but we'll be bringing it to a close shortly. We've gone now for almost 2 hours, which is remarkable, and great to have so many of you join. I said to Mrs. Stories and Sips, I won't go late now tonight. I'll go for an hour. And she laughed because she knows that it'll just go on and on and on. Thanks, John, for joining. Great to have you here. Richard says, there's no show like a Barry show. I appreciate that. Lisa McGrath from joining us up there in Boston. Great turtleneck. Thanks, Lisa. We miss you. Thanks, Brian. Great to see you. There's Michael. Great crack. He's staying up for the one more behind the scenes. Good man. Brian, fair play. Thanks for sacrificing. Richard says he thinks I was a little less wise this week. Yeah, I'm 4 teeth less wise this week, but my size of my swollen lips make up for the volume of missing teeth, I can assure you. Sola asks if there are any outside Ohio tastings maybe coming up, especially in New York. We have no plans for in-person tastings at the moment. We're waiting to see how that all plays out. We're going to continue our virtual tastings every week. And we're going to do some tastings via the Facebook group. So group and Zoom, and we're doing a bunch of private tastings at the moment. So I'm working with some companies to do tastings for their teams and for groups of people and families who want to get together, we're doing tastings. So if you want to organize any of those, anybody can reach out to me any time. I'll be launching some more news about that in the coming weeks. In the meantime, I think I'm probably at the end of my abilities to speak and to utter words. It was great for the last 2 hours because my 2 guests, Allan and Michael, did all the heavy lifting for me, and I could just sit in the background. And they made it all look smart and look good. Brian says that Novocaine is a good mixer. You should see how many tubes of Novocaine I've gone through prior to coming on tonight. But typical man, I am complaining about a little bit of pain. There's people far worse off than me. Jeff Adams asks if there's any branded tour glass news. Jeff, should we just give him a tease? Jeff, 96 glasses arrived in the door this afternoon. In the next 2 weeks, we'll be relaunching storiesandsipps.com. There's a new brand, a new look, new color schemes, new logo, new events, new offerings, new services, and new products, all coming with storiesandsipps.com. I have a glass here. I have one right here that I can show you that's got some whiskey in it. But I have some gold-rimmed glasses, gold-rimmed Stories and Sips glasses that are going to be launched, that are available in the next 2 weeks. And they will come in packs of 2 or 4 because you should never drink whiskey alone. You should only drink it with people. You're the first to see this. Nobody else has seen this new logo and new look. It'll become apparent and become clear across the channels in the next few weeks. But this will be launching in a special box and a pack with other goodies. So thank you for asking about that, but they'll be coming very shortly. Chris says, sign me up, take my money. I will, Chris. I'll take all your money, as much as you're willing to give. Lisa says they're fab, definitely need a pair. So Lisa, we'll sort you out with some glasses, don't worry. So yeah, those Stories and Sips glasses launching very, very soon. Gold rimmed to match the golden liquid inside. They had to be gold. And I'm delighted with how these turned out. We've got some really interesting things that go with this glass coming too, and they'll all be available in this box. And I can't really say more than that. Well, I can. It'll be. We're launching a little thing called a sip box. I won't tell you exactly what's in it, but Mrs. Stories and Sips is saying, shh, don't tell everybody. But the sip box will contain the glass. Will contain the glasses and a few other bits and pieces. And all you'll need to do is add whiskey. So that's going to be launching very, very soon. Brian says 4 now. Price is no object. All right, they just doubled in price because of Brian. You can all thank Brian for driving up the price with his poor negotiating skills. Richard says they look great. Laura Barry says they're class. Laura, we'll trade a glass for a painting. for a print. Laura, for those of you who haven't checked out Laura on Instagram, I shared on my Instagram stories this week a beautiful painting that she did of Dick Mack's pub and a lovely narration on her Instagram stories. Let me find her art page here, and I'm going to put it up because I want you all to follow her. Laura Barry Arty Pants. All right, let me put it up here now, Laura. We're going to give you some bit of exposure, supporting the arts. All right, I want you all to go to Instagram and I want you to follow Laura Barry Arty Pants. Laura did and go up to her story and you'll find some of her paintings and her prints, but she did a lovely one. It's also on her timeline there of Dick Mack's pub with a lovely narration about the back kitchen on Cool Kitchen, the back kitchen in Irish, which really just struck me when she shared it, and I'm delighted to see it. So yeah, go check that out. Richard says I have to get a gold neck turtleneck to go with the glasses. I will. I'll have to. JJ says he wants to try his dream cask in one of those glasses. Oh, JJ, your new arrival, the baby arrived. Congratulations to you and your wife. Congratulations. That's great news up there in Toronto. Great to see. Fantastic. I'm delighted. I knew that was imminent. That's great. Johnny McNally says, great work, Laura. He enjoyed your coverage of that. Jim wants to know why the glasses don't come filled. You can thank Ohio liquor laws for that, Jim, as you well know. Turtleneck with logo. Ed wants a turtleneck with a logo. We might arrange it. We might arrange it. Lisa says she loves me calling Melinda Mrs. Stories and Sips. Lisa is an activation specialist for Pernod Ricard in Boston, former Jameson brand ambassador in Columbus, where I met her. And we became very close with Lisa in Columbus. And we wish she was in San Diego now, or even in Ohio. Laura, Jeff says he's been to Ballincollig. See, it's a small world. It's a small world indeed. So I think that's about it, folks. We're almost at 2 hours, and it's been a great lock-in. I'm going to go sit and cry in a corner in pain with my lips, or soak them in cask-strength whiskey. Probably both. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining again this Friday. I can't believe how many turn out every week. And we're going to find more and interesting things to do over the coming weeks. These lock-in live streams aren't going away. Excuse me, they're not going away even if the pub's open. We want the pubs to open, but we also want people to have a place to come when they're at home or to watch after they come home from the pub. So this will be continuing. Chris asks if there's curbside pickup available for those glasses. If you're in California or Ohio, you'd certainly be able to get them cheaper without the shipping, no doubt about it. So yes, we'll arrange curbside pickup. Right now, we'll arrange that in San Diego. So thanks, everybody. I'm delighted to have hosted again tonight. Thank you to Michael Cowman, Irish Whiskey Brand Ambassador, and to Allan Dwyer, President of the Irish Whiskey Society of America. I look forward to seeing you all on in the Irish Whiskey Fans of America Facebook group. Thanks a million for joining me. Have a great weekend. Stay safe. I'm going to find some ice, some cask strength whiskey, and some Novocaine, and I'll see you all soon. Slán.